Welcome to For Good Measure, an interview series celebrating diverse composers and other creative artists. I'm Nanette McGuinness, Artistic Executive Director of Ensemble for these times. In this week's episode, we continue our Da Capo Conversations, a mini-series where we'll be giving familiar segments a topical twist. Today, we revisit Brennan Stokes and Hitomi Oba's perspectives on how their identity and culture have impacted their music making or career. Here's what Brennan Stokes had to say.
It's been really fun to be an active title holder with the Imperial Council of San Francisco. There's definitely a gratifying nature to being able to do drag and raise funds for your local nonprofits and charities, as well as this idea of like my drag persona, Nikita Vega, to again kind of donning this elaborate costume and this process of transformation, from Brennan to Nikita is and back again is has been really fun to shift into and to really explore my masculine and feminine and in between energies and mindsets. And again, I think it again just really kind of rings that bell for me of the flair for the dramatics and the theatrics.
Just what I was thinking, yeah.
And it's just been so fun to again feel like there's this other side to me that gets to be just this really fun. um the numbers that I do are sometimes funny, sometimes serious, sometimes more dramatic in nature. But that's been really fun to explore the ever shifting natures of what gender even means, as definitely as a construct, and to explore again this idea of the masculine, the feminine. I think it helps me to even kind of center and balance those energies when composing,
Hmm.
to feel like if there are moments, um you know just you can still be kind of again not to associate strictly that like masculine has to be strong, but there's to have feminine strength, to have masculine tenderness, to put begin to figure out what you know in what vein do I want to channel my energy, or to have particularly if I'm writing a piece, as most of my pieces so far have been for either sopranos or mezzo sopranos. I'm writing for a women's voice
Mm-hmm.
and with text from typically like a woman's perspective. um I think as a gay man, there's definitely this, there's that similarity. I think is for gay men and straight women, we have our affections for men. So I think there's something to be said for reading texts where there's a longing for, there's pain, there's heartbreak associated with a man. And
Mm-hmm.
there's something that I think is that resounds very deeply, and that draws to be able to write for the female voice. um which again, it's almost like as I don't have that exact register, but it's fun to even kind of imagine and kind of allowing that feeling of the voice of this higher range to explore and embody. And it definitely as Nikita,
Mm-hmm.
to and she is definitely more feminine presenting drag. And I have always very much enjoyed um the the transformation of shaving off my stubble or my beard, and completely turning into a female presenting uh drag queen has been really fun to just increase, I think, general creativity, and inspire myself to kind of push um what this idea of transformation can be.
Yeah, push expectations, push boundaries, push
Hmm.
creatively. Does Nikita sing? I've not seen her perform.
Nikita has not performed live. She is an excellent lip syncer, though. Actually, I did make my kind of my piano debut at the gay pageant, when I where I won my title, performing a short piece by Brazilian 20th century composer Camargo Guarnieri. And it was the first time I had displayed my more classical training on the keyboard in public and in drag, and that was also really fun.
And successful, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was fun to begin to channel those talents through my drag.
You've actually been talking about Brazilian and Venezuelan composers, which leads me to ask you, I didn't know this when we first met, but you're half Peruvian.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I can hear that might be part of why you're exploring these composers, but tell me how that part of your identity affects your musicianship or your music making or your composing.
yeah, definitely. My mom is full Peruvian, and I've been able to go back to Peru and see the family several times over the years.
Oh, wow.
I think the most recent time was actually Thanksgiving of 2018. Kind of all of the my mom's schedule, my schedule lined up, and was also able to go with my uncle and some cousins. I know, so it's always been really great to go back and kind of get in touch with the Peruvian roots and still maintain contact with some of my cousins, via social media. So my family back in Los Angeles as well. And I think growing up listening to Peruvian music, and especially at family gatherings at my grandma's house,
Mm.
that musical language, that culture, um, was definitely steeped into me as even as a young child and teen. Um, it was always fun, at some point in the family gatherings, there's always a point where, there's always someone who starts dancing, and the rest of the family, there's definitely a little bit of a dance floor that starts to open up to Peruvian music. Um, and I think even that's also something even recently that I, you know, have been trying to explore even compositionally is music. If I find myself in a bit of a roadblock to even try and with my body try and explore movement that can express what it is that I'm trying to compose and kind of even physically break through that mental barrier, and try to translate what is this feeling or this body movement. How does the body want to react to music, and how does it, how am I both in my head and my hands and body, voice, if there are roadblocks in the mental and the vocal, and maybe if I'm at the piano, it's not quite coming out, then maybe it's time to just get up and,
Physicalize.
yeah, physicalize and trying to physically manifest what is it that I am trying to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Fascinating.
that also has been very helpful. So I definitely am always thankful for, kind of having that even kind of early exposure and experiences of dancing with family and just having music be that ground floor that really connects us all.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that the dance experience and the dance rhythms are what you associate with your Peruvian roots, or is that too simplistic?
I think there's, an element of the dance, and there's lots of the kind of like Peruvian waltzes that are out there, but there's um there's always kind of this sweet melancholy, and even kind of some of the harmony, and there's this um kind of a lovely sadness sometimes that's kind of interwoven in a lot of the Peruvian folk music that I would grow up listening to.
Like wistful melancholy.
Yeah, and just it was always just, again, just a different musical language and experience to have. Especially most of the music is on guitar as well, so that was also fun to hear just a different timbre and texture, um than just piano. Yeah, it's always been really beautiful to have my Peruvian roots to also go back to and be inspired by.
Yeah, it sounds very enriching. Here's what Hitomi Oba had to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's inevitable, right? It's inevitable that our, backgrounds as people influence our music, and I think it's just a matter of whether we're kind of like putting up barriers to inhibit that or not. So again, being aware of when I am putting up maybe potential barriers and like, letting them down, because if I let them down, then I think inevitably it'll influence these things. So yeah, I'm realizing as I get older, I become more self-aware of these things, like, and unpacking all various things. I'm realizing more and more how it does influence my career, right? So if we're just talking about the career portion, not even the musical part,
Mhm.
my trajectory to becoming a professional musician, the childhood influences, the support I got, being in an environment where, yes, arts were valued, for instance, and people were supportive and encouraging. And obviously there were also, being I'm realizing again more that I was also subject to negative biases and messaging as a
Mhm.
child and as a young person and as an adult, that have to do with like, expectations of what one can or not do.
Right, right.
Um, it's, and the intersection of these various biases. I'm like a small Asian woman. I used to be a young small Asian woman, which is like very subject to a lot of like different kinds of racial and also gender based things being here. So then how that translated to how I kind of not consciously, but learn to behave to survive in these fields, where I was often the minority. So I'm realizing now that a lot of the demeanors I take in professional situations were ways of acting to kind of survive those situations, like like, oh, I'm not a threat,
Right.
please, like, I'm not a threat, I'm also not a sexual interest or romantic interest, like, I would like to be regarded with respect, and like, or like, I kind of used to, in order to do those, kind of send this message, I might like prop others up more than necessary,
Hmm.
to kind of like create this, hierarchy on my own, not on my own, it was existent, but me kind of like enforcing a lot of
Right.
these social
Reinforcing.
hierarchies, reinforcing them to kind of, yeah, is to try to survive and, um, protect myself.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm kind of been realizing, even just like this past week, I've been like unpacking a lot of these things. I'm almost 40 and like it's taking a long time for me to realize these things. But I think also actually, yeah, going back to the being a parent thing, I'm realizing a lot of these things now as I'm parenting
Right.
two girls. Yeah.
Sure.
Like this is another parent tangent. But and they're obvious, it's not having to do with music profession, but for instance, my older daughter had an experience recently where she kind of like was uh, stood up in a situation where someone was doing something that she didn't appreciate. It wasn't like super serious or anything, but I think like her teachers described it as like she first like used her body language to show them she didn't like it, and then when they didn't stop, she like said something verbally like, I don't like that, can you stop?
Good.
And you're right. And but I realized the big realization here was that my immediate reaction in that situation would have been to tell her like, oh, can you say the same message but in a way that's nicer, that doesn't hurt the other person's feelings? But when I brought this about, the teachers were like, no, we're proud of her, she like, this is important for her to be able to state this in the way she did, exactly like she did, especially as a girl in the
Right.
society. And
To
I
own her
just
power.
felt
Yeah.
to own her value, and it was this huge realization for me, and that it was like a shattering realization for me that I was passing on my conditioning to her. My inclination was to
Hmm.
pass on this conditioning to her, and it was shattering to me. And I've been like conscious of it since, I mean, obviously be kind is a message I want to pass on,
Right.
but my inclination was her to kind of consider the other person's feelings more than even her own, um, and to say like,
Yeah.
we don't want the other person to be offended. So I've been kind of carrying that over into my professional situations as well. And I applied that to a realization on a recent gig where I was like, oh, I'm doing it again. You know,
Yes.
I'm doing it in this situation because I was playing with people I didn't really know. And,
Hmm.
it was in a kind of situation with maybe like older people, who were not on the same kind of,
Wavelength.
we were that place that we were talking about earlier. And so I think I was being extra cautious, and I was
Hmm.
being extra, propping them up more, and it kind of like, I was like, oh, I'm reverting back to this thing, even though I had this realization. And it's very deep conditioning, especially being a minority in these kind of, especially in the jazz field, it was like predominantly male dominated. Sometimes I was the only woman, it's often like, okay, most of the time I'm the only Asian American woman.
Yeah.
Actually, I can only count several instances without my sister where I was not the only Asian American woman, often younger than everybody else too. So, yeah, it's it's been an
Struggle.
ongoing struggle, and realizing these things. And then I think I'm glad I'm able to realize these things now so that I can hopefully try to address them more as I parent and also as I continue, working in these environments. Um, yeah. But yeah, musically too. That was mostly about even just like being a professional in the field, but musically, especially, this again goes to the jazz world a little bit more just because it's more male dominated, and Asian Americans are less represented there.
Right.
But there's, a lot of times there's been a need to like defy expectations, especially
Yes.
coming from a place like Berkeley where everyone's like, yes, you're a woman, like there's a lot of hope hung up on you. Like, you're a girl, you can, yeah, you go get him. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna go get him, like I can play like the guys is basically
Right.
the messaging I was getting as I was growing up. And so that translates to certain kinds of playing and also behavior on the bandstand. And demeanor too, right? So just kind of reflecting back on that now as I get older, and again trying to be like, well, what is my voice? And
Right.
that isn't have to do just with expectations, whether they're positive expectations or negative expectations. The matter of like proving yourself or kind of trying to, or, I don't know, respond to people's hopes. I don't know. So musically, that's been, again, a lot of unpacking and trying to figure out what that means. But also, I'm grateful because I've been enriched by so many diverse perspectives and inputs. And so kind of trying to embrace these various traits that might seem less competitive, and recognizing my reasons for making certain decisions has been an ongoing kind of somewhat more recent priority.
Maybe related to having kids, that
Absolutely.
that the model that you're providing and the mirroring that you might be seeing, because I think it's so hard in our society. It isn't just the conditioning. There's the conditioning that you were talking about, and the impulses that we're trained out of,
Right.
right? Because they're not nice necessarily, in quotes, not nice necessarily. But there's this really tricky balance that a woman has to walk between knowing what's right, speaking her mind, and being put down for that,
Right.
or being afraid of being put down for that. It's just a really thin line.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As a woman, and I'm realizing now, yeah, in this new role as a mother, especially too, right? So it's
Right.
like, how vocal should I be about being a mother? In some cases, it's so important, right? To say, like, yes, representation, like, I'm more a representation, right? So for other people to see and to kind of like, maybe change people's minds about these perceptions. But at the same time, you're right. Then you're making yourself, or I'm making myself more vulnerable to potential, professional backlash,
Sure.
and stigma. So yeah, it's a fine line, like you say. Yeah,
Yeah. And that line moves around. It's not like,
moves around.
it moves around time wise and location wise. And so,
Right.
you don't
The
always know where
company.
you are. Did you find that in terms of the trajectory, that either being a woman or a Japanese American, an Asian performer, musician, composer, did it affect the trajectory of your career?
That's hard to say. That's hard to say. I think in a lot of ways, I received a lot of encouragement.
Sounds like it, yeah.
Maybe because of that.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I would also say I received a lot of encouragement and support in despite of that as well, right? So so yeah, I'm not sure. I think I'll be having to discover that more, like how my path could have been influenced that, like in terms of the actual, actually following this path forward. Yeah, if it's in despite of that, or also, but because of that, I attributed a lot of it to my parents,
Yeah.
of being able to follow through with this, and kind of like reminding me over and over, like, yes, arts are important to humanity, and
Yeah.
just being encouraging of that, and reminding me of the values of what's are important. Yeah, so I think in some ways it's helped, and in a lot of ways I feel like I did it despite the difficulties of, having those identities. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's a perfectly legitimate answer to say, no, didn't affect it at all. But it sounds like for you, it was good.
Yeah, yeah, there were challenges because of that, I'm certain, absolutely. But I think in some ways it did have, it did help in a lot of ways too.
Thank you for listening to For Good Measures Da Capo Conversations, and a special thank you to our guests for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast by clicking on the subscribe button, and support us by sharing it with your friends, posting about it on social media, and leaving us a rating and a review. To learn more about E4TT, our concert season online and in the Bay Area, or to make a tax-deductible donation, please visit us at www.e4tt.org. This podcast is made possible by grants from the California Arts Council, the San Francisco Arts Commission, Grants for the Arts, and generous donors like you. For Good Measures produced by Nanette McGuinness and Ensemble for These Times, and designed by Brennan Stokes, with special thanks to co-producer and audio engineer Stephanie M. Neumann. Remember to keep supporting equity in the arts, and tune in next week for Good Measure.